Today we're going to work on understanding what percent means. I know you've all heard it before because most of the time when you get a test, the first thing you tell me is, I got 85%, Ms. Zinzer, or I got 70%. So we're comfortable with using the word percent. We're going to understand what we can do to write things as a percentage. And percentages can be written as fractions, ratios, or we can use the percent sign. Something that we need to recognize for today's lesson is the value of a whole in a basic percent, such as our math tests, is the number 100. Okay. So we are going to be working with the floor plan for a department store, and we're going to figure out the percentage that each department takes out of the whole. So here's our floor space. It's occupied by several different departments. It's a simple 10 by 10 grid, so we know that 10 times 10 equals 100. So we have 100 spaces in the area of our department store flooring. The red boxes represent checkout. Green is where they sell CDs and DVDs. The yellow is for women's clothing. The blue is for men's clothing. The purple is for children's clothing. And the orange is for toys. Now, I've already written these as a product of a fraction, because we've done this lesson before. This was pretty basic, right? If I come over here to women's clothing, I can see that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 boxes across. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down. So I have to do 5 times 5, which is where I get my numerator of 25. And again, since percent means per 100, I'm taking these out of 100. Women's clothing is represented by the fraction 25 over 100. Now, if I want to write that as a ratio, it's a little bit different. I do this, 25, and then I have the colon, and then the number 100. And if I want to write it as a percentage, we can just write it 25%. So if we look, we can do the same thing with the men's clothing. So I'm looking in my blue squares, and again, I'm just counting. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 going down, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 across. 4 times 5 is 20. So I get my 20 over 100 for my fraction, 20 to 100 for my ratio, or 20%. Now I'm going to go back and look at the children's clothing. Now this is not a nice even rectangle, but here's what I did. I still counted down where I had equal rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and counted across 1, 2, 3, 4. So here's my 20, but I had 2 extra. So children's clothing is 22 out of 100. Again, written as my ratio or written as my percent. Toy department, I bet that's your favorite section in the store. Again, I'm counting over where I have equal ones, 1, 2, 3 down, 1, 2, 3, 4 across. So 3 times 4 is 12, but again, there's those 2 extra. So total space is 14 out of 100, written as my ratio, and then written as my percent. Our CDs and DVDs, a row of 9, so that's a pretty easy one, 9 out of 100, 9 to 100, or 9%. And then the checkout corner, that whole bottom row of 10, so 10 out of 100, or 10%. So that's great, and it looks like we have, that's pretty basic and simple, provided we're taking it out of 100. But what if they give you a number that's not 100? How are we going to figure that one out? So we saw before that the men's clothing section took up 20 out of the 100 spaces on the floor. So we could write that as the fraction 20 over 100. Well, but someone else might have said, well, no, it occupies 1/5 of the store. They'd actually be correct, because remember when we did equivalent fractions, we can create those by dividing how many times 20 goes into 100, right? So 20 fits into 100 5 times, right? And you have one section of it. So we can call that 1/5 as well. So we have to be careful that sometimes people are going to simplify those fractions. But for today's lesson, we're really going to be writing exactly what we see. And then as we move through more lessons in this topic, we're going to see what we do with percentages that don't have a base of 100.